Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this call where we will provide further color on our latest announced acquisition in Brazil. My name is Manuela Ramirez, the Financing and IRO. The call today will be recorded and posted in our investor webpage. Also, we already have the presentation posted there, where you can see it in the events section. In the menu here, you can find the chat to write your questions, which we will answer at the end of the call. Please include your complete name and the institution you represent. Now, allow me to introduce to you the members of our management team who will be leading the call today. In the first place, we have Juan Ricardo Ortega, who is our CEO. We will also have the participation of Jorge Tavares, our CFO, Andrés Baracaldo, our Chief Growth Officer, and Freddy Zuleta, the General Manager of our Transmission branch. Juan Ricardo, let me give you now the floor so you can present this snapshot of the transaction.
Thank you so much, Manuela, and thank you to all of you for attending to this conference call. For the Grupo Energía Bogotá, we're extremely happy of what has been accomplished, and it's totally in line with the strategic plan. 2 years ago, when I became the president of the group, we sat with many experts and all the board members, and looking at the future, it is clear that in Latin America, transmission is going to be the sector for growth and where opportunities were going to be developed. And that's why we focus the attention in growing this segment and strengthening our focus. So this is one of the main acquisitions and allows to put the company in a position to be one of the largest investors in transmission in Brazil. And we can see further growth coming about within the next 2 years. And that's one of the key aspects of the strategy. And it shows the investment capacity for the group and the capacity to get the right leverage to increase the return on our investors. This opportunity, if you look at the geography that will be explained to you later in the presentation, it is focused on the northeast, where all the aeolic power generation has very significant prospects, and the future layouts clearly indicate how they are going to be investing in direct high voltage, direct current infrastructure to bring that to the markets of Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, and Minas Gerais. This is an asset that has no construction risk, has no inflation risk. Is done by Brookfield with Simi, extremely well executed. We visited the whole line with our team, and we have one of the best teams from Grupo Energía Bogotá in Argo in Brazil, and our partner, which is Red Eléctrica de Spain. And after having looked at the asset carefully, we realized that the opportunities for return, given the very low risk of it, had a significant potential. And it offered very positive synergies with what we have invested already in the previous 4 lines that we had bought with Brazil and one from Bralma. So this is just an idea of what we have accomplished so far. And we're going to give you all the financial details so you can clearly portray how this is going to be increasing the value of a Grupo Energía Bogotá. And we're very happy to present with Jorge every single number so you can clearly look for yourselves what we have done and show you the willingness to give you access to all the information and our commitment for transparency and continue the execution of our strategic plan. So Jorge, why don't you go ahead and give them all the colors of the financial numbers and what this brings for the company in the future.
Sure, thank you, Juan Ricardo. So this is the perimeter of the transaction. So FIP is a fund controlled by Brookfield, and Quantum is the company that is investing in the development of transmission lines in Brazil. We are acquiring 5 assets, the one in blue on the left, and they have 4 additional concessions that are probably going to go to market in the near future. In the map, you can see where each of the lines is, and in the bottom table, all the details. There are 2. The main asset is GMM, and then we have Esperanza and Sanguinetti and Veredas with approximately 400 plus kilometers of length. The RAP, which is the asset base under Brazilian regulation, is 706 million reais. And when ANEL established the auctions, the leilaos in Brazil, they estimated that the capex for these assets were going to be accumulated in $790 million of investment. On the top, you can see our investment. We are paying for these assets equivalent of 821 million US dollars, and the enterprise value is $1.4 billion. It's a significant length of assets, to 2,416 kilometers, and you can see all the details. These assets were fully financed by BNDES, as it's typically done in Brazil, with long-term and low interest rate conditions that we will maintain when we acquire the assets and the corresponding debt. We show on the right the regulatory income of, as I mentioned, of 706 million reais, and we are informing you the regulatory EBITDA. The 2023, we acquired these assets at the end of this year. The transaction is expected to close is 697 million. And why the regulatory? Because the cash flows of these assets are quite predictable, and under IFRS, the accounting of certain cash flow streams is subject to volatility and is related to financial markets conditions. So it's not a good proxy of the cash flow generated by the assets as the regulatory one. So transactions in Brazil are done with the regulatory EBITDA, and that's the number we are publishing here, aligned with giving you the best number to assess the cash flow of the company. Next. These are the four key elements, some of which Juan Ricardo mentioned, but this is, we are growing. Our strategy is focused on transmission. We want to add electricity to our portfolio, and Brazil is the key market we decided back in 2020 where we want to grow. So we're extremely happy to have closed this transaction and execute the strategy decided. Brazil is a very constructive investment environment for us in this business. It has not just a friendly regulatory framework, which has been tested over time, but it also has very material expansion signals that we think we can further take advantage of throughout time, and we see this addition to our Argo portfolio as a platform for continuous growth. And also acquiring this asset help us benefit from the capital markets in Brazil, and capital markets have two elements here. One is access to financing, long-term and low-cost financing, because of the appetite in the financial markets for this type of risk, and also eventually for the equity capital markets that also has very good examples of opportunities that we could take advantage of in the future. The critical mass and synergies is important, and we see this transaction being the most material and transformational one as one additional step in this journey for growing. Highlight the partnership with Redeia, Red Eléctrica España was the previous name, and how we have benefited from their expertise in operating transmission lines with high percentage of capacity of generation capacity from coming from renewable energies. This proved to be very important in the assessment of these assets and not just the operational capabilities of the assets, but the cash flows and the valuation also. We also leverage on the management team and the local management team that we have, which is extremely robust. For example, Jose Ragone, our CEO, has more than 40 years of experience in the industry in Brazil, and that gave us a lot of confidence of understanding properly and assessing the business opportunity in a very comprehensive way. By increasing the footprint, geographical footprint, and also the scale, we are going to be able to be very competitive in future investment opportunities. I mentioned one, which is the Brookfield selling their assets, but we see more. And also because we share some geography, so the footprint, our current operation with the acquired asset, we have operational synergies that will give us more efficiency in our operation overall, which is something we look in operating the assets everywhere. We have mentioned consistently over time that we could optimize the leverage given access to capital and the business opportunities and the assessment that we can create value by continuing investing in the business. So the fact that these assets are extremely predictable cash flows, have no construction risk, no demand risk, and in this macroeconomic environment are protected by inflation, which is a very unique feature and something that we will benefit from. So when we acquire this asset, that cycle of high inflation is something that does not bother us as much as other type of industries or businesses. And finally, the low risk of the asset have demonstrated to us that we can get very, very competitive funding to support this transaction. And finally, we are in the energy transition business. Energy transition is our business, and this the contribution of these assets to bringing green energy to the south of the country and the consumption centers is fully aligned with our ESG strategy and the impact that we have to support further growth in the future of those additional developments that we see coming. The assets also are fairly basic in terms of their complexity, and that is also quite positive as we look at this business in the long term. Next. This is on the left, we have our strategic framework. Our purpose is improving lives with sustainable and competitive energy, and this investment is fully aligned with that purpose. One of the pillars is transmission for the future, and this is where this investment sits. Just to focus on the couple of numbers on the right. Electricity, we want to increase the electricity participation in our EBITDA, moving from 43 to 47%, and in the transmission business, almost doubling it from 16 to 26%, all the way to 2030. This transaction is completely aligned with those goals. And in fact, in terms of transmission lines, addition of 3,000 kilometers, it will help us move a long way into that target that I will risk to say that probably is going to be increased then that once we execute this transaction, because we see further opportunities. Next. This is a very nice view of, in terms of the footprint, how this transaction and the others that we have done in the recent months help us increase the transmission business participation. So from the 15,000 kilometers we have added in transactions, including this one when it closes, 2,000, almost 900 kilometers. And we also are under construction on a more organic way of 2,900. And with that, we will be increasing by 37% our footprint in the transmission business, which is, again, one of the key elements. And then on the right, you have a highlight of why Brazil is so relevant for us. Of course, Brazil is a big geography and a big country, and the numbers of Brazil make the Colombian and Peruvian numbers really be seen as a small, and being a relevant player in that huge economy, and with more than 33,000 kilometers of extra capacity needed, and about more than $16-17 billion identified in the near term of extra investment necessity in the area in which we operate, not the whole country. It's what makes us see this platform of growth as a transformational opportunity for us. Next, and I'll pass it to
Juan Ricardo.
Juan Ricardo.
So you can
Juan Ricardo
give
Andres,
us,
I don't know.
Juan Ricardo, so you can give us your view on the Brazil market and why you're so excited about this market.
Is the information they have presented on the future layouts and the opportunity of bringing all the knowledge from Red Eléctrica, which is one of the leader companies in the world managing transmission grids with a high component of renewables. It brings the opportunity for the group to step up our level of knowledge and understanding of these technologies, and to be able to participate competitively in some of the most interesting opportunities that you will see in the coming future. And given the fact that the assets have such a stable regulation, and I was formerly a board member of ISA, so we've seen the development of the Brazilian market over the last 20 years. We can perfectly see that we are in a low segment risk, a reasonable return, a great opportunities for growth, absolutely coherent with what the world is expecting regarding energy transition, and knowledge opportunity to strengthen the knowledge and the capabilities of our teams, and our partnership with Red Ella. We believe that Red Eléctrica has been an excellent partner with a lot of things that brings to our company regarding the strengthening of our transmission team, and we complement beautifully. So that's some of the key aspects of why we believe the opportunities are right there. And here you have the numbers. No, it's the expansion of the Brazilian grid is going to have over 33,000 kilometers of new lines, and that is for us the most beautiful aspect of having the size and the teams that makes us competitive in the market where there is going to be growth in the coming future. Brazil and Peru, which is where we have put our focus, are the two countries in Latin America with clearly the better prospects. And if you look at the macroeconomic terms of the world, both of them are going to benefit by all the high demands on materials. So we see very good prospects. I don't know if Andres will want to complement on what I've just said.
No, I think I'm sorry, I joined a bit late the call, so let me know if I'm repeating something you have already said. But on top of what Juan Ricardo just mentioned, I think it's important to the way we look at it is that we're acquiring assets that have low risk because of what has probably already been mentioned, in the sense that they are inflation protected, already built, no significant contingencies related to the EPC contracts, or the contracts between CIMI and Brookfield when they acquire the 50% of CIMI, with no significant regulatory risk. These assets have only 3 regulatory reviews within the first 15 years of the concessions, but those reviews are limited to the cost of capital of debt. So the chances of the revenue line changing dramatically are very low. We have no counterparty risk. because this is paid by the system. And we have no volume risk, so we are not linked to the evolution of the GDP in Brazil. For these assets, it doesn't really matter what happens with the GDP of Brazil and how much electricity is being transmitted. So we have the combination of low risk assets, but significant upsides, because one of them is growth, the one that was what Ricardo was mentioning, in the sense that we have significant opportunities for additional growth. Obviously, we didn't include that within the offer, and there are other upsides that are meaningful and relevant that were not included as part of the offer, and those were, for example, the possible extension of the SUDENE tax treatment for these assets. That tax treatment is based on the fact that these assets are located in the northeast of Brazil, which is an economically depressed area of the country, and they benefit for a 75% reduction in the income tax for the first 10 years. There have been precedents in Brazil in the same sector of additional extensions of 10 years for that benefit. So it's something that can clearly be done, and the way to do it is through additional investment, and these concessions will probably have the opportunity for additional investment through reinforcements, and we didn't include that within our offer, and that's, as you can imagine, 10 years of a 75% reduction in income tax is quite substantial. We didn't include within our offer any terminal value, and that's a discussion that is possible in Brazil for the contracts, the type 1 contracts in Brazil. That discussion already happened, and there was a recognition of terminal value. We didn't include that within our offer, and but that's an element that, when the time comes, is possible. We didn't include it because obviously there's some uncertainty, and type 3 concessions have not reached the 30-year term yet, so there's no 100% probability of getting the terminal value, but it's something that we think it can get done. And the other significant upside will be the tax deductibility of the acquisition goodwill. That's a structure that exists in Brazil, that has been implemented in the past, that other people have benefit from it. We have a close presence with our colleagues of ISA. They have used that tax benefit in the past, so it's clearly possible. And we think that obviously we'll start, as soon as we close the transaction, we'll start working on those upsides, the SUDENE tax extension, the use of the goodwill from the acquisition for tax purposes, and those are very, very meaningful upsides. So here we have a rare combination of low risk assets that we are acquiring for a very reasonable rate of return that incorporates what is going on macroeconomically around the world, but a combination with a significant upsides in the terms of growth and the also other upsides that we're mentioning. Here, I'm not gonna spend too much time on this one. I think this one is to reinforce the message that there is significant potential for additional growth regarding these assets, just because of where they are located. As you will know, a significant part of the wind resources in Brazil are located in the northeast, some solar. The regulator in Brazil, ANEEL, has already published their expansion plan for the next years, and there are significant investment requirements in transmission in this area. You have the details there in the slide. Next year, we have very significantly less planned that they incorporate both AC, like traditional transmission investments, but also very significant DC projects. In those projects, just to give you a sense, one of them has an estimated investment of close to 10 billion reais, and another one is probably closer to 15 billion reais. Those will be auctioned between 2023 and 2024. We'll have a look at it to see if it makes sense for us to be there. Obviously, we are not. That's a technology that very few people in the world really manage and are have all the experience on it. So we'll definitely have to look for partners that can give us the comfort to to enter a project of that size and complexity, but it's something that we'll definitely have a look at it. Plus the more normal AEC projects that will be coming for auction in that region within the next few years. An additional avenue of growth, obviously, is that we all know that Brookfield has an additional 4 assets that at some point will come to market once they are operational and they acquire the 50% back from Brookfield. And there's significant synergies between these assets and the assets that we already have through Argo. And as you will know, the main asset of Argo 1 is located in the northern tip of Brazil, which is in Maranhão, Ceará, and Piauí. We have the recently acquired Rialma asset, which we call Argo 4, which is adjacent to some of these assets. And we have Argo 2, which is in Minas Gerais, so we have a very similar footprint between what we have today and these assets that we think will give us a competitive advantage for all these processes that are coming. And obviously, we didn't pay for any of this potential growth. Here, what we just have is explanation of the investment structure that we have implemented. So we will be investing through 2 vehicles. One, we will inject equity into Argo on a 50-50 basis with Redeia. And we'll be investing directly through our 100% subsidiary in Brazil, Gebras. So at the level of the SPV that will be created between Argo and ourselves for the purposes of the acquisition, Argo will have 62.5, and we will have through Gebras 37.5. And that SPV in turn will own the shares of the 5 SPVs that we are acquiring from Brookfield. And the reason what we are doing this is relatively simple, and it's basically based on 2 facts. One is that we value enormously the partnership we have with Redeia, with Red Eléctrica. We have had a very good relationship since we acquired Argo back in 2020. We think that we feel very comfortable with the value that they add to the asset in the sense of the experience that they have operating assets in Spain for a very long time, operating a grid that has a significant contribution from renewables in Spain, so they are familiar with complex grids in the sense of that volatility that the renewables bring to the grid. But also we are aware that for this specific transaction, Red Eléctrica had a disposition to invest a given amount. They have a significant investment plan in Spain. They have other investment requirements in the region. So they had given investment capacity for Brazil. So what we did was try to accommodate that very valuable relationship we have with them, and the fact that they had that investment capacity defined previously. And the way we look at it is that we have a very long-term relationship between Redeia and ourselves. We're going to be here for the very long term. I think we are the type of companies that very rarely sell their investments. So at some points in time during that very long-term relationship, we're going to have an additional investment capacity. At other times of that relationship, they will have an additional investment capacity. So we are just trying to manage those different periods for both partners in the JV we have in Argo. So that's the main reason. As is the case with Argo, in that sense, nothing will change in the sense that we are not going to consolidate Argo. We are not going to consolidate the 5 SPVs. And we will have a small element of new debt at the SPV level, the SPV that will be created, and I think Jorge will cover that in the next slide. I don't know if they...
Yes, as you can see, so far we are very proud of the success of our investments in Brazil. We are very proud of the team we have in Argo, which a very strong team that has demonstrated very strong operational capabilities. We have a very serious and experienced partnership in Brazil with Red Eléctrica or Redea. And we have built a very consolidated company and a very competitive company. We have partners in the construction area that we already know. And CIMI, which was the partner of Quantum, was also our partner in Argo 4. And that means we are very confident on the capability we have in the region to grow. As you can see on the right, the graph on the right, Argo has become the fifth largest transmission player in Brazil, the fifth largest private transmission player in Brazil, which is a very strong position to go for the upsides we have in this region. Private connections for the renewable capacity that is going to be demanded on the region, and for the leiloes or the auction that will have place in Brazil in the next years. And this is going to be definitely good news for our investments in Brazil.
So we are funding this transaction in the way it's shown here. So complementing the different companies structure that Andres showed you. Here we just show you how the money flows. So on the right we see the 4,318 million reais, which is the amount being paid to the seller. Argo, 1,045 million of reais capitalized by Redea and by Grupo Energía, and we are also using a good chunk of cash that the company has accumulated to will have by the closing 200 million reais. We also will capitalize Gebras with 1.4 thousand million reais, and the new company, the company that will be funded by Argo and Gebras, will also have local new debt of 654 million reais. So that's the combination of how this will be paid. The 5 concessions have long-term financing of 3.7 billion reais, and from those, the bulk of those 2.8 are BNDES credit lines, long-term, and debentures. So the total debt of the total net debt of the concession is by October estimated is 3,084, and that put us in a total enterprise value of 7.4 thousand million reais. And then when you look at the next, when we look at it from the GEB perspective, how GEB is using the money, so it's capitalizing Argo, capitalizing Gebras, and that money, which is a total equivalent of $460 million US, we are in the process of finalizing a syndicated loan, which is expected to be signed here within the next couple of months, and we are about to start an domestic approval process by the Ministry of Finance. When we add that debt, 460 million, to our current debt profile, post-transaction, our debt to EBITDA will be in the 4x range, going down. Our current projections show by 2025 to about 3. So we have a fairly quick deleveraging, assuming that the rest of the portfolio stays the same. We don't acquire new assets nor sell anyone. When we incorporate that EBITDA into our projections, Brazil starts to be relevant in our portfolio. We see on the bottom right, by 2026, our EBITDA is 9 from the Brazil operation is 9%. And when we look at Colombia, Peru, and Brazil, and even Guatemala, the country with higher prospects of growth are by a long shot in Brazil. So that 9%, if we continue pursuing this platform, growing this platform in Brazil, would probably be higher in the future. But this is with the numbers incorporated of this acquisition in our financial projections. Next. So with that, I'll pass it to Manuela to answer the questions we have received and then other questions that may arise.
Thank you very much, Jorge. We do have some questions already. I will repeat the message. You can post your questions in the application where you see questions and answers, preguntas y respuestas. You can post them in English or Spanish, and I will start reading some of the questions now. From Gabriela Bachile of Pine Bridge Investments. She's asking, could you please confirm how much GEB will pay for the assets and how will the company fund it? Jorge?
I think we presented it already. The question came earlier. Just to add that, so we are getting a new syndicated loan here in GEB at the holding level, and we'll send the money to Brazil in the two ways I show you. The decision we have yet to make and implement eventually is how to manage that exchange rate risk. That will be kind of the only additional information. There is a deep market. There is banks' appetite for us to hedge if that's the decision we make. But it's something that is being analyzed as we speak. We still have a few months to make that decision and eventually implement it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jorge. And Fernan Gonzalez, I think this question is for Andres. The deal suggests an implied EV to EBITDA of 11 times. Could you share valuations of similar transactions in recent years? Did those transactions include the 10-year tax benefit as well?
Okay, Fernando, we have an implied EV to EBITDA multiple of 10.6 if you look at the 2023 EBITDA and 11.4 if you look at the 22. We think that the transaction will close by year end because obviously we have to go through the approvals of ANEEL and CAGI, and then so we think by November, October, November, December, we'll be able to close the transaction. When we look at present transaction, which obviously you know it's an exercise we do to check what we're getting from the DCF, we think that this transaction is very much aligned with what has been done in the past in Brazil in transmission. And we have looked at transactions like Actis acquiring the ADP assets, or OTPP acquiring eVolt, or CETEPI acquiring the underground lines in Sao Paulo that they did some months ago. And when we look at those previous transactions, we get a medium EBITDA multiple of around 11.5. We can share with you our table of precedents through Manuela. I think that we wouldn't have an issue with that. So we think we're very much aligned with what the market requests from this type of assets. And I'll just remind the type of assets we're acquiring, which are, as we said, relatively low risk and relatively low correlation with overall GDP movements. So obviously we have taken into account within our valuation what has been happening macroeconomically around the world. But we have also seen that these type of assets, because of what they are and the type of risks they have, that risk profile, don't necessarily move on the same. They don't have a one-to-one correlation with what happens macroeconomically, and we still see some of our competitors being there for some of these auctions. So, but overall, we think we are very much aligned with the market. We have a rate of return that obviously I'm not going to disclose here, but we think reflects that macro environment. and that gives us comfort to go forward in a transaction like this one.
And just to share, to add on that, as we went along the process, you can imagine we spent many months evaluating this transaction, and the due diligence was very thorough. We had many conversations internally and with Red Eléctrica, Redea, about what will be a value-adding and accretive transaction for both of our shareholders. They are also listed in Spain. And we kind of came to this middle ground position of we are not a spot market financial investor, we're a long-term industry investor, and this acquisition allow us very likely to unlock much more value in the future. But we did indeed increase our expected return in consideration of the recent evolution of the financial markets. So from the expected return that we had identified early on in the transaction, we increased that number to incorporate that new information, and we feel very confident that this adds value to our shareholders, given the return that we estimate. And we say that we don't publish the returns because we act in a competitive market, and the transmission business is perhaps one of the unique businesses in that everybody knows what their revenues are. So there are going to be more auctions, more divestments, more acquisitions, and that is why we need to keep that number close to us. But it is a healthy and value-adding number, I can tell you.
Okay. So thank you very much. We don't have any more questions. Just to close now, maybe Andres, Jorge, Freddy, join me to give the main things that people can take away. Low risk assets, already built, inflation protected, not subject to demand. Maybe the position in Brazil will allow us to further pursue growth in that very attractive market. The way we are financing the transaction allow us to increase the profitability at GEV level. And something else to add, we just got a new question. Don't know.
I think the only thing that is important to add to the summary you made is that the competitive position we already have for the future, which is very, very give us a lot of enthusiastic about the next leiloes or auctions and probably other acquisition options that could be in the market.
Great, Freddy. To close, Gabriela asked us if we can confirm the estimated timing and when will the transaction finalize.
Okay.
Andres.
Yeah, I think as we said, we have to get approval by ANEEL, which is the regulator, and by CADE, which is the competition authority in Brazil. Obviously, those are not fixed times that we have certainty, but our estimated timing for getting those approvals is around October, November. We don't envision any problems with those approvals. I mean, this is a natural monopoly business, so in the past there have been no issues with those type of approvals, or we're already present in Brazil. So we think is more of the procedure to go ahead and the time that it will require, but we don't think there will be any issues at all with those approvals, but we'll be closing by that time.
Thank you, Andres. With that, we are closing the call today. We appreciate your attention. As always, the whole IR team will be available for any further question you ask, and we will maintain you updating on the timing of the closing as time goes by. So, muito obrigada, and soon we will be able to have our Portuguese class and do these calls in Portuguese as well. You just have to wait a little bit. Thank you very much, Jorge, Freddy, Andres, and everyone listening to the call.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.